Only in Japan.
Welcome to Ogasawara, the Bonin Islands in English. This is Chichijima. It's a 24-hour, 1,000-kilometer ferry ride from the city of Tokyo into the Pacific to here, which is paradise and actually Tokyo. Many people refer to this as the Galapagos of the East. It is beautiful, and if you make that 24-hour boat ride, you're rewarded with delicious food, friendly people, pristine beaches, awesome scuba diving, and views like this. It's hard to believe this is part of Tokyo. The Ogasawara archipelago truly is one of the jewels of Japan. It all starts with the ferry, a 24-hour trip from the city center. The boat is always a welcome sight in town. Arriving passengers are given an island welcome. Many people turn out for the once-a-week event. After a full day on board, it's a pleasure to finally arrive. All right, we're here. It's hot. What an amazing trip. It's been 24 and a half, 25 hours. We're finally here, Ogasawara. You get off of the boat, you're greeted with music. It's a really warm welcome, and just looking around, you can see tons of hotels, tons of dive shops, everybody finding where they're gonna be going next. It's really warm. I like it. Like, literally, there's warm people and warm temperature. I gotta get inside. I need a drink. While I make my way to the hotel, let's see where exactly Ogasawara is in Tokyo. There's the megatropolis spread out on the coast. The ferry departs weekly from Takeshiba Port near Hamamatsucho Station. Then you have to travel 1,000 kilometers from the mainland out into the Pacific, passing all other Tokyo islands like Chichijima and Aogashima. The archipelago is referred to as the Bonin Islands, and only 2 islands are inhabited, Chichijima with about 2,000 people, and Hahajima, which is around 440. Ogasawara village on Chichijima is the heart of the archipelago, where the local government resides. My hotel was also the first hotel on the island. Townhouse Mitsu is where the US military gate was in the 1950s and 60s, and where journalists stayed to cover the island when it opened up after the handover to Japan in 1968. It's comfortable and locally run, very close to the port. This is also where I realized that the island was once San Francisco, California, 96636, the address written on a buoy half a century ago. The best way to get around the island is by motorbike, and you can rent 50cc bikes with an international or Japanese driver's license. Motorbikes or scooters offer you the freedom to explore at your own pace. But beware, you need to reserve one well in advance, just like your hotel. They sell out fast in high season. Ogasawara village is much bigger than I thought it would be. There are many restaurants, izakaya, and cafes to keep you happy and full. The island depends on the weekly ferry for many supplies, like fresh fruits, vegetables, and other perishables. Best to stock up a few hours after it arrives. The town is comfortable, parks and places to relax, several cafes and picnic tables for lunch.
and it's never too far from a beautiful beach. By the port, there's a monument to Commodore Perry, who stopped here on the way to Edo in 1853. The history of the island starts as a whaling town. The founder, Nathaniel Savory from Boston, who brought colonists from Hawaii here in 1830. The island's population is of mixed race, a place where American, European, and Pacific Islanders have lived together for generations in peace. A reason why the islanders here are so friendly to outsiders. To learn more about the island's past, I went to Pat Inn. The owner's family can trace their ancestry back to the island's founder. It's one of the newest hotels on the island and has a delicious Western menu. I sat down with Sho Savory, who is the 6th generation of Savory to be born on the island. He has a lot of insight into the island's history.
場所はアメリカのマサチューセッツ出身でハワイに住んでたみたいですね。でハワイでその時に仲間たちと20何人、20人から30人ぐらいの人たちで一緒にここに来たわけですね。ハワイのホノルルから。でここに来た理由はクジラを取るためですね。あれです。ハンプバックホエールですね。ザトウクジラ。ザトウクジラの油を取るのが仕事だったんですね。やっぱりクジラの油っていうのはいろいろ燃料に使えたりしたみたいなんで、非常にクジラが貴重だったらしいですね。そのクジラを取れる場所としてここにずっと住んだわけですね。
After World War II, the U.S. took over the island, and Sho's father's generation learned at American schools until 1968.
Because my fourth generation, my grandparents cannot speak English, so my father talks with them in Japanese, and then go out of house, so many U.S. Navy, even their children also went to the school with Islander together and then speak only English.
So your father's generation, all of the people on the island from your father's generation can speak pretty good English.
Pretty good English. Also older people as well. I think native, almost native English. But they said, some of them said, I forgot the English. But for me, it's native.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is an abandoned air raid shelter for the Japanese military during World War II. It remains here in decay. You'll also find a lot of wrecks, cannons, and guns in the jungle, like this one. They lie where they were left, a reminder of the island's past. It was at that time that former President George Bush, a pilot in the U.S. Navy, was shot down. He was the only survivor of a horrific ordeal on the island. But President Bush returned to Chichijima in 2002 to remember those that were lost on that tragic day and put the events behind him. A lot of life was lost during the island's war days, which is why islanders now are very protective of the life around it.
Over the course of the last 10 days of staying on this island, I've had to walk through that tunnel about a dozen times. And I gotta tell you, every time has been, especially after dark, nerve-wracking, because somebody told me that in there are ghosts. And now this tunnel is a shortcut. It was created by the Japanese Army about 75 years ago, and it cuts straight through to the ferry terminal from Townhouse Mitsui. It's so convenient, and yet it's so scary. You can go around on this road, but it wasn't built 75 years ago. This was.
The tunnel doesn't seem to have any background story, but it's a reminder of the island's purpose during the war, Until 1968, the island was used by both Japanese and US military. The tunnel, the first thing you see after leaving the ship.
It's scary.
Do you think it's haunted? This is Eco Village Pulan, located in the island's jungle. The owner is Shimizu-san, who used to be a Japanese salaryman in Tokyo, but moved here out of concern for the condition of nature in the oceans, and changed his life to live sustainably to protect it. He's inspiring others to do the same with his guest house.
Everybody can change their life. Then I try to protect nature, protect us, something, protect ocean. I try to change my life. みんなもね、すごく海が好きだったり自然が好きだったりするから、少しずつチェンジはしてると思うんだけど、でもなかなかこういう生活をしている人は少ないから、気づくチャンスが少ないかもしれない。それはちょっとわからないけど。
The islands are now a protected refuge, a wildlife sanctuary set up on the east side of the island. The archipelago is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Welcome.
Shimizu-san's guest house is almost entirely eco-friendly, including the toilets.
Please covering your big mail.
Over time, it becomes fertilizer, which he uses for the banana trees out back.
No smell. Nice.
The guest house has plumbing, but they do collect rainwater and laundry water to be used in the toilets. In the bath, there's homemade shampoo and soap. Living in the jungle in harmony with nature is the theme of Pulan. Jungle life can also be classy. Nearby is Yusuke Coffee Farm and Cafe. They grow and roast their own beans. A cup of hot or iced coffee isn't cheap, but it's fun to taste the beans of the island at its best. When it comes to being on top, there's no higher place than Mount Chuo in the center of the island. At 319 meters, or about 1,050 feet, it offers a panoramic view of the jungles below. It truly is spectacular. And so are the beaches. There are loads of them, many completely empty with long views of the Pacific. From the weather station in town, you'll get a bird's eye view of the rocky coast and Bonin Blue Pacific. And on days without clouds, an island sunset that you'll never forget. One of the activities that you can do on Chichijima is jungle trekking. You have to leave town for that. Having a guide is useful, if not essential, to learn about the fauna and surrounding history. From the hilltops, you'll get views of empty beaches and hidden stories of the past in the surrounding jungle like here. This searchlight still sits in the place where the Japanese military left it.
Actually, the roads of Chichijima don't go all over the island. There are places where the road stops and you have to actually walk these nature trails. And it's really good to have a guide to point you in the right direction and to give you some details on the nature that's around you. But it's sort of part of the Chichijima Ogasawara experience.
Most of the island is jungle, and the road on the east side curves around the island sanctuary. When you do come upon trails, you have to have a permit or guide for most of them. And clean your boots and spray it to minimize seeds and spores from the outside. There are places where the jungle is extremely thick, and places where it thins near cliffs, where you can enjoy an epic view of the ocean. Look down there, not a soul around. Why? Because it takes a few hours to hike down there from the main road. But it's so worth it. Most of the beaches on the west side are quite easy to get to. We'll explore the pristine Minamijima next time, where the turtles lay their eggs, and marine life part of why this is called the Galapagos of the East.
And we'll dive deep into the sea in search of adventure. There's no telling what we'll find down there.
Honestly, the sea is like an aquarium here. The deep color of the Pacific here known as Bonin Blue.
So this is the moment when we say goodbye to everybody from Ogasawara. We're going back to Tokyo, the city. It is kind of a tradition. They play taiko drums, and you get these reeds. These are all handmade, headdress. And the story goes that when you leave the island, as the ship is pulling away, you take these off and you throw them into the water. And if they float back to land, that means you're coming back. And I'm definitely gonna be coming back. Ogasawara. It was a great time.
The send-off is one of the most extraordinary in all of the world. There are no flights here, only this large ferry, so the port is where every goodbye is said. It's emotional to see so many of the islanders here to wave and wish you a bon voyage.
Itekimasu!
How you feel at this point depends on how connected you've become to the island. After 10 days, I felt like I was leaving family behind. The island's hospitality making you warm on arrival and giving you chills upon departure. The gap slowly parts, islanders approaching, coming all the way to the edge. That connection between you and the island widening. I know they'll float back to land where I will once again step foot on Ogasawara for another warm embrace. But this is not the end. It seems every available boat is ready and waiting to escort you safely out to sea. Boat captains throttle to keep pace. Passengers waving tirelessly. When the boats can no longer keep pace, there's one last show of love and respect. Locals will jump into the sea, sometimes flipping with daredevil moves, so you will not forget them. It's always the last thing you see from the boat of the harbor, and it's hard not to tear up. The ferry picks up more speed, central Tokyo 24 hours away. But I already know, I'll be back someday to Ogasawara. If you liked it, click that subscribe button and the notification bell, and watch more from my series of adventure around Japan. Mata ne.